Voilà, après cette pédagogie sur les médias sociaux,
Now, after this lesson on social media,
de l'Assemblée, on aura
honourable ladies and gentlemen, honourable secretaries of state, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, and dear progressive friends, it's a great honour as Secretary General of the Foundation for European Progressive Studies to be given the opportunity to say a few words of welcome to our conference here in Paris, in the Victor Hugo room at the French House of Parliament, the Assemblée Nationale. The Jean-Jaurès Foundation and the Foundation for European Progressive Studies are involved in the COP21 conference, which, as you know, will be held in December of this year here in Paris. We progressives want to have a say on an issue that is really a very, very topical, not just topical, but a crucial issue for our future. We're all familiar with the challenges, and they're huge, of course, but by December we need to put proposals on the table, and proposals that will enable us to arrive at an international agreement, hopefully one that will be binding in order to combat global warming. We're all looking for an agreement to limit global warming to 2 degrees. This conference in Paris next December will not solve all our problems in one fell swoop, but it's absolutely essential that we leave Paris with an alliance of nations, so to speak, with a universal agreement that will be binding on governments throughout the world to control global warming and to fight for another approach in order to sustainably preserve our planet. We progressives here together in Paris today must not just listen, talk, or discuss. We need to work together towards fairer and more sustainable policies for a zero-carbon economy and for a social pact that will tackle inequalities and vulnerabilities that have been exacerbated by global warming. Now, this implies considerable change in a lot of the ways we behave, in a lot of our sectors, particularly in the field of energy, where renewable energy must become a priority. Non-combustible energies, dangerous energies such as nuclear power, have no place in our future society. We must commit towards a society that puts men and women at the very heart of our policies. Human beings must be a priority well above the interests of industry, states, and continents. The risk of climate warming is all the more important that the consequences for our traditional markets, and here in Europe, for the last 8 years, we have been experiencing a social and economic crisis that has left a lot of our young people unemployed. But there are opportunities for investment in this transition, which have become increasingly important. We can no longer tolerate limited commitments. Companies that have done so much pollution must accept their responsibilities. Nations and states must find a way to make this compulsory. We need to understand that this environmental crisis stems from the way we use our resources. Producers and consumers must all admit our share of responsibility and act together with countries, with people, and particularly with people who are in need of help, and all that as soon as possible. We are very optimistic, and we realize that a change of paradigm takes time to implement. The ideas we have put into this project, which began over a year ago, are confirmation of that. Gilles Finchelstein from the Jean-Jaurès Foundation will talk to you more about that later on. I think for a lot of citizens from all nations, from all generations, I think it's already taken for granted that the future of humanity requires a change of attitude in our lifestyles. Towns and regions and provinces are committing themselves, are convinced, because they're convinced that there are other ways forward. Paradoxically, numerous sectors of industry are unfortunately extremely negligent, as though they were unaware of the danger, though this has been proved scientifically. Honourable Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, with these few words of welcome, we'd like to invite you to take part today in these exchanges. We'd like to invite you to listen to the experts. We'd like to invite you to take part and talk with our politicians. I'd like to invite you to hear the appeals of our national leaders, who are all fully aware of the climate challenges facing us progressives. Thank you all for your attention.
Mesdames et messieurs, le programme prévoit qu'aujourd'hui...
Ladies and gentlemen, according to the program, I'm here to say a few words of welcome. So, on behalf of the Jean-Jaurès Foundation and its president, Henri Nallet, I'd like to very sincerely welcome you. But I'm going to do a little bit more than that. I'd like to say a few words about the work that went into preparing this conference and what we expect of it. When we go through the list of names of cities in which conferences on the climate have taken place in recent years, one gets the impression that there's been an ongoing process, but also an unproductive process. It's been mission impossible, so to speak, to the extent that, and though this is very rare, extremely rare, to the extent that when asked which country would like to organize this COP21, there were no candidates. François Hollande spoke up on behalf of France and took the risk, accepted the responsibility, and in a few months' time, France will chair COP21 with the task of facilitating the emergence of a consensus, and as Ernst said just a few minutes ago, with the view to finding a universal agreement. Now, given the importance of this challenge, we at the Jean-Jaurès Foundation, which is a social democrat foundation, a French foundation, we have asked ourselves what we can contribute. We have made the climate the top priority of our program for 2015. And this is the first time that the climate has been top of our priorities. Once again, we've entered into a partnership with the Foundation for European Progressive Studies. I'd like to thank the Chairman and Secretary General of FEPS once again. We believe that our common strength is that we have each have a network of progressives throughout the world. And we have decided to look to a number of countries that we deemed objective, we deemed key to succeeding here. We sent a mission to India, China, Brazil, Canada, the United States, the Niger, South Africa. We sent out missions to these countries to get a better grasp of the point of view of our counterparties in civil society, to get a better grasp of the momentum, of the dynamics, to get a better grasp of the objectives, to add information to what we already had, and to put our heads together to work out what platform we progressives can put forward for the climate. This is what's led us to today's conference, a conference that we decided to hold well in advance of COP21, believing that if we are to have a bearing on the course of events, it was important to meet early. We have brought together politicians, experts from France, from Europe, and from throughout the world, in fact. Because in this area, more so than any other, I think we want our foundations to be a kind of a crossroads, to organize a debate between the speakers, but with you via the interactive system that Blaise described earlier on. We wanted this conference to be an opportunity to put forward proposals, to circumvent the status quo, to get around it. You remember this famous British conservative who liked tautology and who said, things are already going so badly, why would you want to change them? It's the danger of a status quo that we would like to circumvent. So we've chosen to organize this conference in 3 stages. First of all, by looking at a long-term vision, starting with the idea that the development model of developed countries, if it is to continue, will be extended to the rest of the planet. So the idea was to look at the possibility of a socially just and zero-carbon model of development. The second part is the practical issues. Insofar as we are convinced that the efforts made to mitigate warming, so far as the ways and means implemented will probably be insufficient to close that gap, how can we raise our ambitions and how can we fund the transition? Thirdly, back to policy and political issues. Here the idea is to work on concrete proposals that Jean-Jaurès Foundation, who is the head of international relations at our foundation, who has overseen this entire climate program for our foundations. Jean-Jaurès Foundation, in fact, was among the people who visited the list of countries I mentioned earlier. He has tried to put together 5 proposals that will serve as a basis for our discussion with our political leaders later in the afternoon. Between these 3 debates, we will be very fortunate to hear from Laurent Fabius just before lunch. We'll have a message from Achim Steiner, the Executive Director, Head of Climate Affairs at the UN, the UN Programme for the Environment, Jean-Pascal van Iperen, Vice President of the IPCC. I wish you all well.